Давайте заглянем в будущее энергетики. Кажется, представьте мир, где энергии достаточно для...
Let's imagine a world which is enough for everyone. The large data centers are making the calculations and computations. Cities are filled with holograms, whereas AI is managing great flows of information. Energy reach regions, develop robotic plans, innovative transport, smart electronics. Everything is part of one single infrastructure, whereas the management system is coordinating the logistics in real time. Underlying all of that is energy. With each step forward, humanity needs more and more energy. But in order to break new horizons, we need to carry out a technological breakthrough in supply, production, and transportation. What will the energy of tomorrow look like? The Russian Energy Week. Together, we will achieve more.
Gentlemen. Доброе утро и добро пожаловать на...
Good morning and welcome to the core session of today. World energy markets, transformation of relations and a balance of interests. We've got an astounding panel. I would like to introduce myself. Most of our compatriots know that I've been at the TV for 30 years, but I'm here as president of the Global Energy Award. We've got bids from all across the world, but this panel is the best. We've got Alexander Novak, deputy chairman of the Russian government, Abdulaziz bin Salman Al Saud, Minister of Energy of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. We've got two heads of world's largest energy associations, Haitham Al-Ghais, Secretary General of OPEC, Peter Szijjártó, well, you know, everyone knows him, Hungary. Welcome, sir. Mohammed Hamal, Secretary General of the Gas Exporting Countries Forum. I've told you we've got two heads of world's largest energy associations. It's the second. We have never had a guest from so important a country as Vietnam. We've got Deputy Prime Minister of the Socialist Republic of Vietnam, Bui Thanh Son. Talking about all parts of the world, I have to say that we've got people from Africa here. We've got Mr. Fode Mansorai, who is Director General of the Petroleum Directorate of Sierra Leone, Alparslan Bayraktar, Turkey, Ministry of Energy, and traditionally a welcome guest we often have is Viktor Karinkevich, Deputy Prime Minister of Belarus. But let's start with the host, with Minister Novak. We are taking stock of the year and also casting a glance into the future. How do you think the world economy and Russia are faring through this stage of turbulence, restrictions, and also hopes? Thank you, Sergei. Before I give an answer to your question, I would like to sincerely and cordially welcome all the guests of the Russian Energy Week here in Moscow. This is the 8th time we are holding an international forum on global energy, and I'm very glad that this time we're expanding the number of countries that have come. The number of participants stands at around 5,000 people. These are people from Russia, but also guests from all across the world, from different countries. I would also like to thank my colleagues who are joining me here at this panel discussion, who've managed to find the time to take part in discussing important issues related to the development of the world energy. I'm not going to reiterate and introduce everyone because our moderator, Sergei Brilov, has given all of us a marvelous introduction, but I would like to thank my friends once again here for being here, despite your tight schedules, despite the geopolitical challenges we are facing. Your presence here is testimony to the fact that energy should not be politicized. This is that part of the economy which is the guarantor of its development. It creates the environment which allows humanity to move forward and achieve a greater standard of living. Of course, there are important issues in our agenda today, and they are of a global nature. Sergei, you have asked me about the global trends, what we see, how Russia is faring. Given the fact that the number of panel discussion participants is big, so I'll be very brief. I will just point out several global transformations we are currently witnessing. First and foremost, despite everything, the energy consumption across the world is increasing just as energy demand. Almost in all domains, hydrocarbons, new renewable sources of energy. What's important, we see an accelerated demand for electricity. Last year, it grew by 4.3%, which is more than the average world economic growth the world economy grew by around 3%. But these trends will persist because the electricity consumption is going to grow at an accelerated pace due to the introduction of new energy-intensive computational technologies, due to the introduction of e-transport, as well as the automation and the spread of AI. We're also witnessing an increase in oil demand, something which had been predicted. The oil demand peak was predicted, but we still think it's far off. Last year, it stood at 1.3 million barrels, and another 1.3 million barrels is going to be the growth this year. That's what we expect. We also see that there is a huge growth in gas. Last year, we saw an increase in gas consumption across the world by 2.8%, mostly driven by the Asia-Pacific, which is understandable. The thing is, the economy is growing at a higher pace in these economies in the Asia-Pacific. Right now, even though there were predictions that the coal industry was done for, it still grew by 1.8% on average across the world. As we can see, the hydrocarbons are still guarding their dominating role in the energy mix, even though the share of renewables is growing, mostly in electricity. But that said, traditional sources of energy are still very much alive, very much relevant. We're also seeing a certain shifts in the structure of the world energy consumption. We see that there is a tilt towards the Asia-Pacific and Africa. I'm referring to the countries that are currently growing at a higher pace, which in turn requires a higher energy level of consumption. And that means that we will see a continuation of transformation of global transportation and logistical chains. As for my other observations with regard to the world trends, I can tell you that speaking about investment in energy, I have to point out that there's a lack of investment. I refer in particular to hydrocarbons. This, among other things, is due to the uncertainties which we had been witnessing in the world energy politics since 2015. As you are aware, under the Paris Agreement, there was an environmental agenda which was very in vogue, and there were plans to reduce carbon emissions in order to achieve carbon neutrality, that is, a net zero for greenhouse gas emissions. These are good trends, but it has also had an impact on the global trends in the motivations of energy companies for the long term. Apparently, this is not just simply due to global political changes which are currently favoring the environmental agenda, the green agenda. We also see that the deposits of easily recoverable deposits are being exhausted, both economically and technologically easily recoverable. But right now there is a shift towards deposits that are harder to recover, which is yet another factor that explains that there is a risk of underinvestment in oil and gas. Right now, the International Energy Agency is saying that we need to get back to investment into the oil industry, or else we will be running the risk that demand is going to be supply is going to be lagging behind demand, and this will create an imbalance. Another factor is a surge in geopolitical tensions, as well as sanctions pressures, as well as trade wars. All of that compounds the risks of energy supply, apart from the problems in investment. All of that creates a significant impulse towards the transformation of the world energy market. There's another thing that has an impact on global technological and energy markets, namely rapid technological changes. The thing is, we are seeing the implementation of cutting-edge technologies that are driven by AI. Also, we see that there are data centers popping up, which creates a high demand for energy. All of that, alongside the development of electric transport, has a significant impact on what is happening in the global energy. These trends have to be studied very carefully, and this is what we're doing together with our friends and partners who are present here at the Russian Energy Week. We're also doing that as part of OPEC Plus and also GCF. On other international platforms, I refer to BRICS, to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Our energy track is very active. Maybe I'll get back to some of these questions later, but on the whole, I can tell you that despite all the global transformations which we have been witnessing, both the Russian economy and the Russian energy is doing very well, overcoming the obstacles and adapting to global changes. Our electricity and energy sector is developing, our internal markets are developing, just as our partnerships with a great number of countries. We're mostly oriented towards new markets for consumption, and we're certainly grateful to our partners with whom we are developing energy partnerships, not just in the form of supplies of energy resources. I'm also referring to bilateral projects which allow us to carry out joint products when we produce highly processed goods and also create other products with a high added value. Thanks to that, our economy has been growing at a high pace. We were growing at 4% per annum. Right now, we are entering the phase of carefully managed slowdown with a view to reining in the inflation spike. Our government is pursuing a very careful macroeconomic policy, and we are confident that very soon we will achieve the pace of economic growth, which is going to be on par with the average across the world economy, as per the instruction of the Russian president. But on the whole, I can tell you that the Russian economy is doing very well, successfully overcoming the obstacles and barriers and problems in the global economic markets. On a particular note, I would like to point out our deep cooperation interaction with our partners and friends with whom we're working together to overcome the obstacles I've described. Thank you. Thank you, Excellency. Two technical statements. First, the thing is, we hardly hear one another on the stage, so please leave the the earpiece on, because it'll be easier to listen. And the thing is, we have many panel discussion participants, so please stick to 4 or 5 minutes. And I can tell you that the Minister of Energy of Saudi Arabia just made a joke before we went on stage. He said, I'm not going to say anything. I'll just, raise the thumb, or maybe... Are you going to speak, Minister? Would you like to say something? Okay. What has brought you here to Moscow, apart from the visa waiver between Saudi Arabia and Russia?
There is quite a few things. In fact, just to tell you how many, I had to make sure that I put it in paper, simply because there are quite a few sources of collaboration. But knowing how regimented you are, I would like to just to glimpse through a few of the things that are relevant and important. We certainly start from pivotal points, both when it comes to us, which is our Saudi Vision 2030. While set, you have the Russian National Development Goals. We have been working, Alexander and I, for the last 6 years to put together certain tracks where we will reach out to many of these sectors that we are all aspiring to achieve some serious collaboration. It expand and span all the way from industrial and innovation cooperation as a priority, reflected actually in one of our industrial city called Modin, while also working with the Moscow City Department on innovation development of MIU, and we're looking forward for the Promio 2026 to be hosted in Saudi Arabia. We also have serious collaboration in the field of electricity network technologies, and also in electricity when it comes to renewable projects and what have you. Connectivity, but a different type of connectivity, but which has to do with the tourism. We have just recently launched our direct flights between Riyadh and Moscow. I think it is witnessed here in Moscow how much Saudi tourism is happening and will be happening. And of course, it is noticed that also some Russian tourism is happening and will continue happening. And we look forward to expand on that. In fact, our Saudi Tourism Authority has established an office in Moscow. It goes also to education, health, some serious collaboration with certain renowned Russian institute and university, as equally also the collaborating part from our side is also one of many of those renowned and known universities and research institutes, including also media. We have a collaboration between TASS, Sputnik, and also a cultural collaboration. Not to mention one of the important things that people don't notice, we have a serious collaboration when it comes to Hajj. There is lots of Russian who are Muslims that they would like to come to Hajj, and Alexander and I even had to intervene in making sure that all the Russian Hajjis that wanted to come to Saudi Arabia last week were attended to. So it takes quite a few issues also to have that human connectivity, which we are really proud to continue pushing and introducing, because it gives you a dimension, a different dimension, not only the political collaboration and outstanding bilateral relationship at so many things, be it at the political level, at the economic level, at the energy level. But honestly, we believe that human connectivity is quite important. Equally also, we have collaboration in water desalination, agriculture, food processing, pharmaceutical and medical services, municipality and housing, space, and many other things that demonstrate, as I said, the wide spectrum of the bilateral relationship. Altogether, these achievements across more than 11 sectors, with entailing 27 different institutions and entities from both countries, reflect a common shared and sustainable growth of where we seeking innovation, long-term prosperity for both sides. And we do see a lot of compatibility, and the additionality is also there. I would say equal additionality. The climax of it this year, I think we will be holding our 9th session of the Joint Collaboration, Intergovernmental Collaboration Committee, which I and Alexander share on the 5th and 6th of November. We're planning to have a business forum. I believe from the Russian side, I think there will be about 100 different businessmen, companies, equally will be joining with other Saudi businesses and businessmen. And we intend to make sure that we don't lose sight that also our tools in bringing commercial, industrial, economical investment and prosperity is the private sector. So we're going to be hosting that forum with the view that we will hopefully celebrate so many of these possible agreements that may come our way. Now, so I believe that with what I've said, I think all of us here should say, give it the thumb up. Thank you.
А вы, кстати, вместо того, чтобы хлопать, вот так бы показали.
Well, instead of the applause, we definitely would expect the audience to show us the sum up. Do that. Why not?
Talking about the transformation of relations and business as usual, but business is not as usual. And that's the reason that I'm going to be asking Mr. Algais about how things are in the OPEC world, how OPEC is adapting its strategies to the new realities. And I think we are no longer capable of forecast things. We can only expect what happens, can't we?
Well, first of all, thank you, Sergei, for the question. Let me start by thanking His Excellency Deputy Prime Minister Novak for inviting me to speak here. It's a pleasure, really, to be back in Moscow to speak with such a distinguished group of high-level speakers. I would call them my bosses, actually, sitting right on my right-hand side, the chair and co-chair of OPEC Plus, and all the other bosses sitting around. So it's an honor. Thank you very much. For us at OPEC, we stay focused on the fundamentals. This past September, OPEC celebrated its 65th anniversary, 65 years. And hopefully next year we will be celebrating 10 years of OPEC Plus collaboration. And we are grateful and very proud that the Russian Federation has been a stable and solid partner throughout this journey since it started in 2017. We stay away from the noise. We stay focused on the business. Things are always evolving, and OPEC has evolved over 65 years of history. I believe this is one of our strengths that has allowed OPEC to be one of the leading forecasting institutions globally. Our research is taken seriously by many around the world, including, I'm proud to say, here in the Russian Federation, where our collaboration with the Ministry of Energy, with His Excellency Alexander Novak and his team, we do technical dialogue workshops every year, a ministerial level dialogue with the Russian Federation and with many partners around the world. And our ability in OPEC to do a bottoms-up approach to technical sound analysis of what is really happening in the world is what makes us unique in that respect. We stay away from ideology, we stay away from politics, and we focus on the hardcore facts and raw data, which enables our research to become, despite what you said, Sergei, yes, it's a turbulent world and a lot going on, but that's a constant. And for us on OPEC, the constant is the ability to keep all that noise away from the technical, sound, detailed analysis that we do, where we focus on economic growth, we focus on population growth, on urbanization, on all these trends that really lead us to a lot of the things that His Excellency Novak touched upon. I mean, the economic growth worldwide, we're seeing it growing still at 3%, 3.1%. We're seeing the world economy actually from now, when we talk about your point about the difficulty in forecasting. People say, yes, it's difficult to forecast. But I think the one solid fact that has never changed, despite all the bumps when you forecast, is that the world population continues to grow. We're going to reach almost 10 billion by 2050. The global economy continues to grow, despite setbacks every now and then. We're going to reach a global economy that is double the size of what it is today by 2050. Urbanization is phenomenal around the world, and especially in the developing world, non-OECD. All of that leads to one clear signal, that the world will need much more energy than it is consuming today. By our forecasts, which I must say have been proven correct, we are seeing that the world will need around 23% more energy, primary energy, from now to 2050. And with that, of course, oil will definitely continue to play a significant role, still maintaining 30% of the global energy mix in the year 2050. And of course, we have a rise in natural gas, but I'll leave that to my brother Mohammed from the GCF to talk about. And the importance of believing in the concept that the world will need all energies. So our member countries in OPEC and our colleagues and partners in OPEC Plus, we are investing in all energies. We are not excluding any form of energy. Renewable energies will take a prominent role. Gas will take a prominent role, and coal and oil will maintain its leading role in the energy mix in 2030. So we focus, in a nutshell, Sergei, we focus on the hard, raw data, the realities on the ground, the things that have proven after all these years of 65 years of work in OPEC, that they are constants. And when we talk about transition, and everybody loves this term, transition and transitioning, what does transition really mean? His Excellency Novak said, a few years ago there was a theme about moving into green energy and moving away from oil and gas. Now even those who were calling for that are retracting and saying that we will need more investments in oil and gas. We will need more investments in energy overall. And this is our message in OPEC. Despite all the so-called turbulence that we see in the world, we stay focused on the solid facts on the ground and the data that provides us to one clear message, and the importance of having a stable and consistent message. For our business and energy, you cannot have flip-flopping messages or yo-yoing messages and U-turns year after year as some are doing. We have to be consistent, because this is an energy and investment intensive energy business, where its investments are required, but they need clarity. They need robust messaging. They need to have an environment where there's stability. And this is what we are proud to be doing in OPEC, I must say. Sorry if I took more than 5 minutes.
You have actually bad discipline at OPEC, but we'll correct it at some stage. Thank you for using the word brother, because I was now going to ask Peter Szijjártó about his brothers in Europe. Peter, to be completely honest with you, I didn't quite expect to see you here today. You've reached all those agreements with your European friends and brothers. You no longer need us. You have new gas supplies from that other side of the world, yet you're here. Why?
Well, I have a very short answer, because Alexander has invited me. And that's always a good reason to me, and that would be enough. But I have a longer version as well. You know, I regret to say, but my European brothers are really going crazy when it comes to energy. Even basic definitions have to be clarified. For example, what does diversification mean? Well, diversification does not mean what the Europeans try to mean under that. They want to understand diversification as a replacement of one source of energy with another one. This is false. For us, diversification means that you have more sources of energy and more delivery routes. The more sources, the better. The more routes, the better. For us, the issue of energy supply is neither political nor ideological issue. For us, it's an issue of reality. And when it comes to reality of an energy supply, it is being composed of three things: physics, mathematics, and experience. Physics in a way that you can dream about energy sources to be utilized in your national energy mix, but if you don't have the infrastructure, you don't have the pipeline, then you will not be able to utilize that source of energy. Second, when it comes to mathematics, you have a certain demand. And the pipelines leading to your country from certain locations, whether they can supply your demand or not, that's very easy to judge. It's mathematics. You have to compare the capacity to your demand. It's not rocket science. And third, when it comes to experience, you know, you have an experience of cooperation. You have an experience of cooperation with partners. And I think all countries in the world are smart enough to judge who are reliable partners and who are not reliable partners. And now in Europe, we are being forced by Brussels to replace our cheap and reliable source of energy to a more expensive and less reliable source. Would that make sense from the perspective of Hungary to do that? No, it would not. Why? Because the safe supply of our country is a core issue of sovereignty. And once you are being forced to put the safety of supply of energy of your country at risk, Your sovereignty is being challenged. And we are not ready to let our sovereignty be challenged. For us, it's obvious that with politics, with political statements, with press conferences, you cannot heat the houses, you cannot operate factories, and you cannot make hot water. You need sources of energy for that. And therefore, for us Hungarians, energy, supply of energy will never be an issue of politics or ideology. And we will always stick to our sovereign right to put together our national energy mix in a way that is being helpful to our country. And we will never let anyone to put pressure on us to decide against our safety of supply. Currently, with our national energy mix, we are safe. When it comes to gas, we have a long-term contract with Gazprom, but we definitely do buy energy, gas from other sources as well. From Turkey, we are the first non-neighboring country to Turkey which buys Turkish gas. We are buying gas from Azerbaijan. We are buying gas through the LNG port in Croatia. And we are going to buy gas from Engie and Shell as well, based on long-term contracts we just signed. But, physically speaking, if we are being cut from the Russian gas source, the remaining infrastructure will not be able to supply the country. So currently, we have a diversified system. But now we are being pushed into another situation where we would be totally dependent. And this is something that we will never let happen. If Turkish Stream is being phased out from our energy, from our gas supply, physically the remaining infrastructure cannot supply the country. If oil pipeline Druzhba is being phased out, the remaining infrastructure cannot supply the country. This is so simple, no rocket science, physics, mathematics, and experience. So currently with the Russian, Croatian, Turkish, Azeri, French, Dutch, American energy sources, we are fine. My question is why we would phase any of these out from our national energy mix. Why? You know, those who want us to cut the Russian oil supplies argue based on the argument of diversification. But come on, how can you call cutting yourself from one source as a diversification? Currently, there are 2 oil pipelines leading to Hungary. Brussels wants us to cut one of the 2 under the phenomenon of diversification. But how can you call cutting one of the 2 pipelines leading to your country diversification? How can you consider having 1 pipeline than 2 safer? This is insane, this is scandal, you know, and this is total lack of logic. And I want to say that we really cherish our cooperation with our Russian partners and colleagues on the field of energy. Why? Because of our experience. We have never been let down. The deliveries have always arrived. When we needed more, we got more. When we needed less, we got less. Contracts were always respected. And my question is only why we should cut this relationship. So, when it comes to the decisions of energy supplies regarding Hungary, only one thing matters. And this is the national interest. And what is our national interest? To ensure safe supply and to maintain the lowest gas prices of the European Union for the Hungarian families. If we are being forced to change this structure of energy supplies of the country, energy prices would skyrocket in Hungary. And we don't want to put our families in Hungary into a situation that the energy prices increase. So we stick to our sovereign right to ensure the safe supply of Hungary and to ensure that the Hungarian families enjoy the lowest gas prices in Europe. And we'll stick to this position of ours regardless of any kind of pressure you can imagine, because you know us. Thank you.
Я под вопрос себе позволю. А вот
If I
каково...
may, just one more question. How does it feel to be the only person who preserves common sense?
Well, you should not forget about the Slovaks.
Okay.
So we are two. You should not forget. You should not forget that our patriotic allies have won in the Czech Republic. So we are free. And if you look at the developments in European politics, you see that patriotic political parties are getting stronger and stronger. Although there is a very regrettable and concerning development in Europe, that patriotic politicians are usually under very heavy attack, be it political, be it legal, and sometimes, unfortunately, be it physical. But regardless of all of these attacks, we, the patriots, will get much stronger, and then Europe will come back to the path of rationality and common sense, you can be sure.
Я заранее резервирую с собой...
Well, I simply have to reserve the opportunity to get back to this question to Alexander Novak, but I will do that a little later. However, I'd like to draw the attention of people here to the design of this room. It's beautiful, and look, around the perimeter of that, we see the pipeline. And through this pipeline, we can have gas or oil being transported, maybe even common sense could be transported via pipeline. So it's high time I address the General Secretary of Gas Exporting Country Forum. We haven't talked about gas yet. Just lately, gas supplies were guided by the principle of cost efficiency and convenience. You have pipeline, you have LNG, cost-effective and convenient. The current reshuffles that Peter Siato just talked about mean that the costs and expenses are growing. How would you assess the growth of expense to the global economy, primarily expenses related to ideology rather than logistics? And a follow-up question, if I may, as a continuation of our conversation with our European friend. By the way, in the Association of Global Energy, we've done a report and even a film on this matter, but right now we're focusing on that even more. So the regulation and evaluation done by the European Union on methane emission. What is this regulation about? What is this move about? Is that about economy or is that, again, ideology? And OPEC has been talking about that lately. What is your level of concern with this issue, internal European regulation of methane emissions?
Okay, and good morning. At the outset, I would like to express my appreciation to His Excellency Deputy Minister Alexander Novak for his kind invitation and for continued support of the Russian Federation to the Gas Exporting Countries Forum. Russia is a founding member and a very active member in our organization. I would also like to express my appreciation to His Royal Highness Abdulaziz bin Salman and to His Excellency Alexander Novak for their leadership in stabilizing the oil markets and the leadership of the OPEC Plus, which has an impact, of course, on oil markets, but also indirectly on gas markets, especially in the last 5 years, where oil and gas markets went through a real roller coaster. You all remember the COVID-19 pandemic and its dramatic impacts on energy markets and oil and gas markets, with demand declining sharply, as well as prices. And this was followed in 2001 by the strong post-pandemic recovery and the sharp increase in prices. In particular, natural gas reached at least the TTF, the European hub benchmark, $38 per million BTU in December 2021. So in reality, gas prices started increasing before 2022. But in 2024, the decision of the European Union to reduce and limit its gas imports from the Russian Federation led to a dramatic increase in prices. The TTF reached a staggering $95 per million BTU in August 2022, outpricing a certain number of developing countries, such as Pakistan and Bangladesh. But since then, the gas markets have stabilized. Today, the TTF is around $12 per million BTU, but it remains in real terms much higher than the average between 2015 and 2019, almost double. Of course, the region that was the most hit by this situation was the European Union, with inflation affecting the economy, but more importantly, the energy-intensive industries, the steel, cement, glass, fertilizers, petrochemicals, and we are seeing some relocation of some of these industries to the US, where there is a clear price advantage. Natural gas is one-third. Price was one-third of what is in the EU. Of course, in Asia, Asia was less affected because it is mostly dependent on long-term contracts with prices at least partially indexed to oil markets and therefore benefiting from the OPEC plus stabilization efforts. In 2024, it is important to underline that gas demand has reached a record level, and we expect this demand to continue growing this year by around 1.6% and next year by 1.8%. And thereafter, we will have a wave of new LNG capacities coming in stream up to 2030, around 250 million tons, which is almost 50% of the current capacity. This, of course, is a challenge and opportunity. Challenge because it creates a downward pressure on gas prices, but an opportunity because affordable natural gas will lead to certainly an increased demand. But after 2030, there will be a need for additional investment, additional expansion of capacities. We see demand increasing by 32% by 2050, and the share of natural gas going from 23% today to 26% in 2050. So from our perspective, we believe that the golden age of natural gas is still ahead of us, not behind us. With regard to your second question, indeed, the EU methane emissions reduction regulation is, we have a deep concern with regard to this regulation. Although it is presented as a domestic policy measure, in reality, it has a de facto important extraterritorial impacts. For example, in 2027, EU gas importers will have to prove that the non-EU exporters are applying equivalent standards to those of the EU in terms of both MRVs, measurement, reporting, and verification systems, as well as LDAR, leak detection and repair systems. And therefore, it means that in reality, the EU is regulating the methane emissions reduction in these non-EU countries. And this is not consistent, of course, with the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, with the principles of equity, common and differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities. It is not consistent with the Paris Agreement, whereby the commitments or contributions to mitigation and adaptation are nationally determined, not imposed by other countries, in light of their national circumstances, capabilities, and priorities within the context of sustainable development, and in addition for developing countries supported by the provision of financial resources, technology transfer, and capacity building. Furthermore, we believe that this regulation is not consistent with WTO principles, in particular the principle of non-discrimination, the principle of national treatment, and the principle of proportionality. Think about it. The penalties of non-compliance could reach 20% of the annual turnover of the company. This has never been seen in the energy sector before. And therefore, we in the GECF member countries are investing to reduce the environmental impacts of their gas operations, reducing routine gas flaring, reducing methane emissions, developing carbon capture utilization and storage, improving the energy efficiency of gas operations, using renewables in the gas operations, but they are doing it in a sovereign manner. They decide to do it, not imposed by another country or another region. So this is why we have a deep concern with regard to the EU methane emissions reduction regulation, but we have also a concern regarding other regulations such as the carbon border adjustment mechanism, which tries to impose a carbon price on the other countries, which is also not consistent with the Paris Agreement, as well as the corporate sustainability due diligence directive, which has also this extraterritorial effect. Thank you very much.
Я бы к этому, кстати, добавил, что даже в
I would
гидроэнергетике
also add to that it is impacting the situation even in hydro energy. We've been in touch with some scientists and we've done the comparison on the assumed reduction of methane in the European Union from the hydro storage facilities. We've analyzed the hydropower plant in Russia, in Brazil and Paraguay, and the scientists have confirmed that it's not happening. However, the European Parliament back then considered imposing some measures against hydro energy even. So it's quite curious. And it's not that everything that Peter Szijjártó is voting for finds support with us. I was saying that we have representatives of all parts of the world today. That is indeed the fact. And the attentive audience members may have noticed that Americas are not represented, but it is here with us. Let us listen to the video address recorded by the Vice Deputy Minister of Venezuela, and I would request the organizers to play it for us. That is Executive Vice President and Minister of Hydrocarbon of Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. Now, let us listen to this video address. I believe that holding of this International Energy Forum is very timely in the context where energy is undoubtedly at the center of global geopolitics. We find ourselves in a situation of aggression against leading oil and gas producing countries. Specifically, that applies to Venezuela. I would like to use this opportunity to highlight that in the course for 8 weeks, the United States of America have been posing military threat to Venezuela with a single purpose: to seize Venezuela's abundant resources in oil and gas. The military attack on the country with the largest oil reserves on the planet will undoubtedly have implications for the energy sector of the whole world and future development of this area. Another challenge is illicit sanctions. 26% of global oil production is under sanctions, and 43% of global reserves are under illicit, unilateral sanctions and coercive measures. Now, this calls us to reflect on what impact this illegitimate and illegal sanctions will have on future investments in those countries. How are we going to cope with the projected growth in demand? Those are the issues that will be discussed here at the Russian Energy Week. The new world is emerging today, and at the forefront of this world are the BRICS member countries. This is the new world that shows respect towards international law, seeks cooperation and complementarity. It does not seek control in the way the West interprets it, that claims or aims to have control over the rest of the world by claiming to have respect towards the United Nations Charter. Well, taking into account what we have discussed over the last 10 minutes by the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade of Hungary, the Secretary General of GCF, and the Vice Minister of Venezuela, I'd like to address you, Mr. Novak. If I am to use the language of the previous speaker, it's BRICS. In Russia, we talk about pivoting towards the East, but it's basically one and the same thing. Refocusing on the East. Is that a forced step, or do you think that it would have happened anyway, and this is the natural evolution of the situation, and we would have pivoted to the East anyway, taking into account what Peter Siarto was talking about, that any people in Hungary that have common sense are joined by Slovakia and now the Czech Republic. What if Europe is coming back to common sense? Would Russia have enough gas for everyone?
Sergei, as far as this reorientation is concerned, with regard to the East, I would say that this is not just a forced step. The thing is, this is Russia's strategy. And this strategy was articulated by the President of Russia a long time ago. We are fully cognizant of the fact that the centers of economic growth are currently concentrated in Asia, mostly in the Asia Pacific. And at this stage, they include China and India, but also at the next stage is going to be Africa. That is where the countries are starting with a lower base, but are growing at an accelerated pace, at a pace which is higher than the world average. Now, the European countries have decided to restrict the supplies of Russia's gas into European countries. As of now, indeed, our supplies have decreased. In the past, the Russian gas occupied around 44% in the European energy mix, whereas right now it has been brought down to around 19%. That means it has been halved. But that said, the Russian gas is still flowing into Europe, and just as you have pointed out aptly, there are countries that have managed to preserve their common sense. There are also sensible governments that have a sensible approach towards preserving their economic and in energy security. And I would like to thank Minister Siarto for preserving this in mutually beneficial energy and economic cooperation between Russia and Hungary. We highly appreciate the sovereignty as well as the approach that Hungary is sticking to, despite the pressure coming from outside, from some supra-structures, including the European Commission. Well, we understand all of that, but luckily, common sense is still prevailing. Peter spoke about diversification consisting of three elements: physics, mathematics, and experience. But another component is economics, which I would also add into this mix. And Russia's gas has always been the cheapest and the most reliable, and it's no coincidence that the infrastructure had started developing since the 1970s. And this infrastructure guaranteed mutually beneficial cooperation. We implemented the largest energy projects in Russia, which assured the reliability, and that in turn guaranteed the competitiveness of European products on the world markets. Right now, this competitiveness, unfortunately, is slipping. As we can see, European economies are stagnating. Those countries that have refused Russian gas are also in the red. They are in the negative, like Germany. We see that gas processing, petrochemical enterprises have been shutting down there or shifting to other countries where the energy resources are more competitive. And in that sense, there is another thing I would like to point out. I would like to dwell on this partnership which is currently being dismantled by the European bureaucracy. European bureaucracy that is demanding that the countries that manage to preserve some slivers of that cooperation to abandon that completely. The thing is, gas is
something that you can get in large quantities. But the thing is, right now there are long-term contracts that are lacking. Sometimes you need a short and very significant spike in supply. And, Peter knows that with the cold days, we can provide additional quantities, additional volumes of gas on a short-term basis to ensure daily consumption. And Russia was always willing to accommodate any additional requests. We always had the capacity, in winter especially during the cold period. Maybe economically that was not that beneficial to us. We understood that those capacities stood idle in the rest of the year, but that said, these capacities were there and they allowed to provide additional volumes of gas when the need arose in Europe. We do the same in Russia during winter. We can cover the peak consumption periods, and we also have this margin of maneuver, this latitude, and the same applied to Europe. But Russia is always open to dialogue, and if there is a need, if the number of countries with common sense should grow, if they want to ensure the energy mix in a reliable fashion, we are ready. As you're aware, Russia has the largest gas deposits, and we are the second largest gas producer, and we are willing to continue this cooperation, certainly on a mutually beneficial basis, on the basis of a partnership. But as far as the eastward vector is concerned, this is a natural trend which is due to the global shifts in the global economics and the global energy sector, due to the transformation. We would have pivoted eastwards anyway, because that meant diversification, that meant new export routes, and also that meant the development of our Far Eastern regions, because most of our resources in gas come from the Russian Far East. So such trends allow us to develop our country and the regions of our country. Thank you. As a follow-up to this eastward pivot, but with an emphasis on LNG, I would like to say that we've got His Excellency Mr. Bui Thanh Son, Deputy Prime Minister of Vietnam. Vietnam is for the first time represented in the Russian Energy Week. Vietnam has just received the first batch of Russian LNG. You've got 2 new terminals commissioned with the total capacity of 5 million tons. Well, around 4, but it can be increased 5 times if need be. So what are your plans in terms of infrastructure development and in terms of expanding your capacities for processing LNG? Thank you, Excellency Mr. Novak, for the invitation. We highly value your invitation to participate in today's forum. I believe that the participation of representatives from all across the world, from different continents, is testimony to the great interest of the world community in energy. Energy is an issue that is relevant every day, on a daily basis. It is not enough to ensure energy security. The thing is, energy is also contributing to a stable social and economic development of each and every country. Moreover, energy helps increase the standard of living of our citizens. And getting back to the question of Deputy Prime Minister Novak, I can tell you that if we want to develop in a stable and accelerated fashion, I can tell you that last year our GDP grew by 7.5%, whereas this year we forecast the growth at around 8%. And starting from next year and until 2030, we want to achieve double-digit growth. That is why we are currently drafting a special plan, a roadmap, which will help us transition to new sources of energy. The thing is, the climate is changing, and that is why we would like to bring down the greenhouse gas emissions, and we also want to save energy. That's why we have put forth the goal of importing 1 million megatons of hydrocarbons. Maybe the figures are going to be even bigger. We also want to increase the volume of electricity production, and we want renewables to have 25% in the energy mix. Right now, our oil refineries account for around 70% of our needs, but we also want to expand our reserves, and these reserves have to account for around 90% of our energy needs, and that is why we are building new LNG terminals all across the country, all across different regions, because our country geographically is in an elongated form, in an elongated shape, and as Sergei has just pointed out, we have already commissioned 2 LNG terminals with a total capacity of around 4 million tons per annum. But by 2030, according to our plans, we will have built around 14 gas-powered power plants with a total capacity of 20,000 megawatts. So this gas-based energy production, electricity production, will allow us to supply electricity to families and to industrial enterprises. We're also involved in a number of other joint projects. We are building gas-based power plants, and the total number of LNG terminals will be around 2014. And started from 2028, all of these terminals will have been commissioned. Right now, however, the LNG imports are carried out by the investors on the basis of commercial contracts under the legislation based on market mechanisms at competitive prices. But of course, we need to diversify the LNG supplies for the sake of stability and independence of our country in terms of LNG supplies. We're currently preparing a number of legislative documents aimed at improving our business climate, including with regard to LNG, gas, and energy supply. This opens up new opportunities of working with Russian partners, with other foreign partners. This will help us improve our LNG capacity, which in turn will help us ensure our energy security economic growth and high standard of living for our citizens. Thank you. Thank you, Excellency, Vice Prime Minister. Well, let's organize an outreach session in Vietnam. We can organize something for you. We are preparing something like that in Latin America and in Africa. We've just held one. I'm gonna talk about that with you. Now, moving on to Africa. I think we need to leave behind this haughtiness which was characteristic of all of us with regard to the developing world, but thankfully right now it's a thing of the past, and we see that Africa is a competitive market. The large players are competing, are vying for the African market, which is a prize. But I've got a question to our friend from Sierra Leone. I would like to ask you, when you say entering a partnership with the Global North, what interests are you guided by? Financial interests, sustainable development, or purely economic interests you want, say, a long-term contract? What is the main guidance? So what's your perspective on us? Thank you.
Very much for the question. Firstly, I'd like to express my sincere thanks to Deputy Prime Minister Novak for the warm reception, as well as the people of Russia for the warm reception that they've given the delegation. So I'm obviously here to give the Africa perspective, but specifically my country is Sierra Leone. So for us, what is absolutely key when negotiating contracts, and this is the message that we've got from international oil companies, is speed. Now, speed in signing contract, because Africa generally has had a long history of delaying in ratification of contracts. I'll give you an example of the last contract that we gave out in Sierra Leone. From application to ratification took 30 days. Now, you would appreciate that is, it's a very efficient process. So, I do have the leader of government business for Parliament here, so we do work collaboratively with the rest of the government arms to make sure that speed is of the essence. Also, the way we're positioned in Sierra Leone is petroleum and energy sits directly under the office of the president. So now this allows us to sign agreements with speed. Now, another key element in terms of signing contract is predictability of contracts. Now, we tend to see that international oil companies, they want the contracts to be predictable. So, for example, us in Sierra Leone, we do have stability clauses in our contracts that we do provide, because government is continuity. So that allows us and investors to have the confidence to come to Sierra Leone to invest. So again, for a country like us, we're prospecting 30 billion barrels of oil in our basin, as well as 25 trillion cubic feet of gas. We are looking for investments. We're looking for that partnerships with European partners to come to work in Sierra Leone and to make sure that we unlock our energy potential. Now, before I leave, collaboration is key. So, I do agree. I do understand. Back in 2009, on the sides of the Russia-Africa Summit, our President, His Excellency Julius Maada Bio, together with Deputy Minister Novak, there was an agreement to, for the formation of a joint working group. So, if time permits, to have that conversation going again, so we can reopen that partnership, because this will be mutually beneficial to both countries. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much indeed, sir. Генайден, я обращаюсь к нашему турецкому другу.
Now I would like to address our friend from Turkey. Turkey has very ambitious goals. On the one hand, Turkey wants to develop traditional energy. On the other hand, it wants to concentrate more and more on alternative energy, and Turkey also wants to be sort of an energy crossroads. How to combine these parallel strategies, as it were, because some think that this is not a choice, but an infernal mixture, as it were.
Thank you, Sergei, and good morning to everyone. It's good to be back to Moscow. Although I was here, in Russia just a few days ago. I attended the International Gas Conference in St. Petersburg and mainly focus on the gas. But as you asked me a general question about the energy, let me start with what we have heard this morning throughout this panel. We heard about security, energy security mainly, affordability or competitiveness, but we also talk about sustainability. But I'm sure you will all agree with me today that today's energy world, supplying reliable energy at affordable cost, is becoming increasingly and extremely difficult to achieve. Because we are dealing with so many uncertainties. Let's look at the last 5 years. COVID-19, supply chain disruptions, volatility in energy markets, commodity markets, trade wars, conventional wars, so many geopolitical tensions around the globe. So to make necessary investment in the field of energy is even more challenging in this environment. And in Turkey, within this framework, within this geopolitical atmosphere, we are trying to develop a unique way, I call it a Turkish way, to address our meeting energy demand, to reduce our import dependency, as well as our goal to reach carbon neutrality by the beginning of mid-century. So we have a greatest challenge that's in front of us. And our energy policy is shaped to address these things. That's why I call it a Turkish way, inclusive, responsive. We cannot exclude any source of energy, any source of fuel. And it should be responsive because we need to change, we need to adjust our markets according to changing market dynamics. And of course, we should be rational. My dear colleagues mentioned a lot about physics, mathematics. Let me put it this, in other words, we need to be rational, not emotional or ideological. So our energy demand in Turkey is increasing. And our estimate, our forecast, as you said, it's not easy to estimate the future, but our estimate, our conservative estimate and forecast that our electricity demand will be tripled over the next 3 decades. And why it's conservative forecast? Because we really not fully quantify the electric vehicles on the transportation, AI, data centers, and maybe in the future desalination, cooling. It's a huge amount of demand is coming from those areas. So if you add all these new kids on the block into this energy plan, that the energy demand is increasing. So how are we going to meet this energy demand? That's why we are not saying to no to any fuels, all inclusive, and not exclude any fuels. That's why we are investing on renewables very heavily. Every single year in Turkey, 8 to 9 gigawatts of renewable power generation come to online. And we have a target to reach 120 gigawatts by the year 2035. But at the same time, we are investing on nuclear. Together with Rosatom, we are building 4 nuclear reactors in Turkey, in Akkuyu. And we are quite close to commission the very first reactor, hopefully next year, and we are going to generate electricity from the first nuclear reactor in Turkey. But we need to build additional reactors. We need to have at least 12 conventional large-scale reactors and maybe 5 gigawatt small modular reactors. So we are going to put renewables in charge. We're going to build and add nuclear into our energy mix. But we need oil and gas. Turkey is one of the largest importers of oil and gas from Russia. For oil and gas, since 2016, we are focusing on upstream, midstream, and downstream. That's why Turkey became all of a sudden an exporter of gas, because we were able to invest heavily in our infrastructure. Now you can bring LNG from many different countries to Turkey, because we invested our regasification capacity in 2016 from 32 MCM per day, now 161 MCM. So 5 times more LNG can come to Turkey. But also we built pipelines. Turkstream, one of the greatest examples. TANAP, Trans-Anatolian Pipeline, another example. And also our internal domestic grid is expanding. Through that, Turkey is soon maybe third largest gas consuming country in Europe. We need 60 billion cubic meter of gas every single day, every single year. That's why we are investing upstream in the Black Sea. We have a large gas discovery in the Black Sea. We are producing gas now, and we are increasing our production. In the year 2028, we'll produce 16 BCM gas from the Black Sea region. And also we have some cooperation with so many international oil companies, gas companies, to operate in different parts of the world, Pakistan to Libya, Somalia, Iraq, and Caspian Sea. So we have other projects on the upstream as well. On the LNG side, I mean, yes, you described, Sergei, the pipeline here, but don't forget the LNG. The glut of LNG in the world coming from mainly North America, Mozambique, Australia, Russia. So these are the key things in the new gas markets, and everybody needs to adjust themselves according to these new realities in the market. LNG provides us a huge flexibility, competitiveness, and when we have this abundant source of energy into our energy mix, especially in the gas side, we will be able to see more competitive prices in the market. We will be able to supply affordable gas to our citizens, as well as all these abundant gas supply and our interconnections through, I call it Turkish blend, the gas that coming from different countries, that we will be able to export excess gas to mainly European market, which they need gas, especially in the southeastern European market. So with renewable energy, nuclear, oil and gas across the value chain, Turkey would like to have this balanced and, again, like an all-inclusive energy strategy. And through our partners, through reliable supply of energy coming from our partners, hopefully we are going to be able to achieve these goals. Thank you.
I was listening to you now very attentively and looking very attentively at the audience here. Well, first of all, I must congratulate you, because you made a couple of lamps to be switched on there, lamps in the... So I was looking at Mr. Spassky from Rosatom when you were talking about the nuclear energy, and he was so glad to hear that. Mr. Michelson, when you came to the LNG, you Turks know how to handle things, but there was a contradiction in what you said. You first referred to Turkey being the third, I think, major producer of that and that in Europe, and then...
Major importer of gas.
In Europe. And then a minute and a half later, when talking about Europe, you said they. So are they or are they us?
I mean, it depends on them.
Good.
Yeah. But frankly, I mean, Turkey is playing and still playing a very major role for energy security of Europe. Again, the pipelines that I refer to, like a TANAP, Trans-Anatolian Pipeline project, bringing a lot of gas from the Caspian Sea all the way to Europe, all the way to Italy. Turkstream, as my colleague Peter mentioned, and Deputy Prime Minister Novak knows very well, in 2016 we signed the agreement with him in Istanbul. The Turkstream now plays a major role for Europe energy security. But again, like you need two to tango, right? So you need to also have a similar approach from the European side. But again, like oil side, gas side, on the power side, we would like to increase the interconnection capacity between Turkey and Europe. So there are so many things can be done, again, but it requires a strong political will and commitment.
Thank you. Teşekkürler. Viktor Mikhailovich Karankevich представляет
Now I would like to address Viktor Karankevich, representing the Republic of Belarus, a great example of energetic pragmatism, if I'm to put it frankly. Without politicizing the energy sector, what are the areas that you focus on in energy transition? Well, we know what are the key areas, of course. I'm sure a couple of faces will be lighted up with joy again in the audience as you say that. But what are your future plans to react to external challenges? Thank you very much for your questions, Sergei. Dear colleagues, first and foremost, I would like to express my gratitude to Alexander Novak, an ability to traditionally participate in the Russian Energy Week. I also would like to thank you for the excellent level of organization. As for your question, the very powerful impetus to energy transition in Belarus is generated by the project of construction of the Belarus nuclear power plant. This facility has been built together with our strategic partner, Rosatom State Corporation, and certainly it is in line with the highest safety and security standards. Nuclear power plant contributes to energy security. It increases the sovereignty of our country in the area of energy supplies, as well as production potential of the key industries of the economy, be that energy sector, industry, construction, healthcare, and many more. And taking into account the commissioning of the Belarus nuclear power plant, we are capable to satisfy the growing demand in electricity. In 2024, it amounted to 43 billion kilowatts per hour, and over the last 5 years, it is a growth of 6 billion. As for the transformation we're going through, I wanted to highlight several more points. First of all, this is large-scale modernization of the grid. There is an ongoing positive trend we see, that is the growth of electricity consumption, both by the real economy and the population. Over the last 5 years, the length of new electricity grids that we're working on increased twofold. That also includes renovation and construction of electricity power stations, better management of the grid. Yet another area that we focus on is creation of more favorable living conditions for our citizens. This is one of the key elements that can be addressed through the energy sector. That is development of electronic vehicles and charging stations. That is broader use of electricity for heat and water supplies, and that allows us to act on the main goal set by the head of state to create more favorable environment for our citizens. Yet another important area is environmental aspects, reduction of greenhouse gases emissions, and through commissioning of the nuclear power plant, we have already taken care of reduction of 20 million tons of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. We are also actively introducing innovative technologies in the gas area in order to create digital twins and offer new quality of services to gas consumers. There was extensive work conducted in terms of import substitution, contributing to greater sovereignty in IT solutions and digitalization. We use our own software. We develop software as a service and offer it to the market, which makes us independent from imports. In doing so, we pursue several tasks that allows us to increase the level of quality of reliability of gas supplies to our consumers, reduction of costs, and therefore we are able to increase the energy efficiency and operations of the gas factories and enterprises. Just to cite an example of the last 10 years, the total length of gas supply pipeline in the country increased by 37%, and the number of consumers increased by 15%. The headcount of the staff servicing the gas distribution stations was reduced by 7%. In doing so, we provide for the quality and the reliability of gas supplies. We increase the level of services offered to the consumers, and all of that is only possible thanks to introduction of innovative technologies and systemic work to automate and digitalize technological and business processes. I also wanted to say that we have truly close, reliable and constructive relationship with our partner, the Russian Federation, and that covers a broad range of issues in the fuel and energy sector. Thank you.
Thank you. I've just been to Latin America. I spent some time there, and I've just went to Kaluga region, and we see green plates on cars from Belarus. These are electric cars, and I think they're becoming more and more numerous. You know, I just watched the cars. I think around half of the Belarusian cars that I met on my way, they're electric cars. Well, let me cite some statistics. Right now, 41,000 electric vehicles are in the streets and on the roads of the Republic of Belarus, and year in, year out, this number is growing. This is due to our systemic work aimed at expanding the charging infrastructure. So yes, green plates, I think they're even more numerous than that, but that's great. Let us talk stock of our discussion. We have 10 minutes. I do not think I'm going to ask everyone the questions, but I would like to address a question to His Excellency Royal Highness from Saudi Arabia. So what do you think?
Literally six or seven different experiences when it comes to how to attend to energy security and energy satisfaction of the economy, satisfaction of energy. That tells you a lot about, you know, this monolithic approach that some people are asking people to attend to is just contradictory with what the real world is. There are countries with different endowments. There are those who are fortunate, located like Turkey, in the middle of too many pipelines, too many different sources of diverse sources of energy and sources of pipelines. There is a country that is aspiring to monetize its own resources and briskly trying to achieve the diversity, the energy that they require in order for them to move to a much prosperous economy. There is our friend from Europe who has been challenged, or the country has been challenged of wanting to be told to get rid of what they are used to, and where there is an infrastructure and what have you, and to substitute it for the unknown. There is so this diversity tells you, as well as ourselves, as well as Russia. I think we have to acquiesce with the fact that people in the final analysis will have to look for energy security, prosperity, and sustainability. And no one is going to compromise this, because in the final analysis, these are governments accountable to its own people. And unless if they do the monetization of their resources or bringing an efficient, meaningful energy system, which becomes a pillar for their economic prosperity and diversity and what have you, you ended up actually losing all of the above. You would not have energy security, you would not have economic prosperity, and if you don't have the two, I don't think you'll be able to attend to sustainability and climate change and what have you. I've been, without being too facetious, I'm not the naive person to think that there shall be a day that energy will be depoliticized. It's actually a misfortune that energy has been, will continue to be politicized in one way or another, as a tool to engage people to make them more prosperous, or as a tool to prevent people from monetizing the resources to become prosperous. That's the reality check that we have to do. And that was also the messaging that should be from here, the gathering, that don't rely on the monolithic approach. Whoever asking others to be assimilating to a certain path is basically either a naive or has it in his head that I will become to the top-bottom approach, and people are not aware and certain and cannot articulate their national interest, and they are there to wow us or what have you to assimilate with their wishes. And this is the dichotomy of what we see now as a reality, that over the last 4 years, look at what is happening to transitioning. Look at the change that is, the realism that is being noticed these days. And I honestly and apologetically would say each and every country has to fend off for its own prosperity, one way or another, because ultimately this is what's going to happen in the financial analysis.
Да, знаете, я сейчас даже замолк, потому что мне пришло в голову.
I just go silent because it has just occurred to me. Well, apart from the representatives of the international organizations, most who have gathered here are people who represent republics. But, you know, the responsibility before the government has been formulated by a representative of a monarchy. You know, political scientists, you really can go mad because unexpected things happen. But Deputy Prime Minister Novak, Your Excellency, as the host, we hope that you'll take host of this session, which has been called Balance of Interests. And what is this balance of interest look like? You know, after His Royal Highness Prince Abdulaziz has spoken, it is very easy for me to answer this question because he has basically given an answer to you. You know, why do we share so many ideas, so many thoughts? You know, when we talked today, we remembered when we had first met. It was back in January 2015. That was almost 10 years ago. Yes, 10 years ago. And we talked to one another too much, probably. That's why we have the same thoughts. But moving on to your question, the balance of interests. This question varies from one country to another, and this is what His Royal Highness has just spoken about. Some need to sell energy resources, and that is their interest. Others are interested in importing energy resources because they lack their own. Some choose the path of renewables. Others build their energy system on cheap traditional energy sources such as hydrocarbons and coal. Some advocate environment. Some hope more to gain from cheap resources. So there are many approaches, but one thing is evident. The search, the quest for new sustainability and the world energy involves striking a balance of interests. There are different interests, but our common and shared interest is to ensure energy security. And just as many speakers have pointed out, the that means that the energy consumption across the world is going to grow, and it's going to grow rapidly due to the spread of digital technologies, and we need to ensure the supply for this demand, and that is our shared interest. And there is no conflict between energy suppliers and energy importers, traditional and green technologies. The thing is, this is all about a balance, because to achieve sustainability, we need to create an environment in which the energy sector can develop and can be the engine of economic growth and of higher standards of living, and this is what Russia advocates for. We are in favor of partnership, of maintaining relations. We believe that we need to search together for the sustainability that the world energy needs so much, because a balance of interest is very difficult, and we need to, bring this puzzle together. And I would like to express my gratitude to all the participants of our panel discussion, all the speakers who have shared their perspectives, their statements, who've found the time to come to Moscow. I do hope that I will have a chance to hold bilaterals with them and not just talk about the global energy, but also develop international and bilateral cooperation. We've got many friends from international organizations, from countries, from our friends, friendly nations, and balance of interest involves not just multilateralism but also bilateral relations. This is the first panel discussion we are having as part of the Russian Energy Week. This is the first, and it's so early in the morning, and we have 3 days of discussions and debates ahead of us. Tomorrow, the key event is going to happen. It's going to be attended by President Vladimir Putin of Russia. He is going to deliver his keynote address at 1 p.m., so 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We'd like to invite everyone of you. It's very significant that the head of our country is participating, and this is going to be a very important event for the world economic community, for the world energy community. And this Friday, we're going to have the Youth Day. Our partners are represented here right now, and they represent not just energy, but also trade and economy. And I'm confident this is going to be a huge step forward. It'll help reinforce trust between one another. It'll open up new opportunities for the good of our nations and for the good of our peoples, which is something our colleagues have just pointed out. So once again, a huge thank you, and I wish you successful work at this forum. Thank you.
Действительно, всем спасибо. До следующих сессий.
Thank you, and see you at next sessions.